In the year 53 BC, Rome suffered one of the most shocking military disasters in its entire history. An army marched into the desert and vanished from the Roman world. Not a single eagle standard returned. And what happened next became one of the strangest historical mysteries ever whispered. Did some of these Roman soldiers survive, travel across Asia, and end up in China? It sounds impossible, but there's a village in northwestern China with an old name that has fueled this legend for decades. Liqian, and the story behind it is equal parts tragedy, obsession, and unanswered questions. Tonight, we're going to walk through the real history behind the theory. What happened to Crassus and his men? What Chinese records actually say, and what archaeology and modern science do, and do not, prove. Because if even a fragment of this is true, it means a piece of Rome could have died and been reborn on the far side of the known world. This is Ancient Vault, where we explore ancient mysteries, forgotten history, and the legends of lost civilizations and heroes. And this story may be one of the most haunting of them all. Rome's enemy was the Parthian Empire, a superpower rising to the east. A Roman politician and general named Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest men in Rome, wanted glory. He wanted conquest. He wanted his name beside Caesar and Pompey, so Crassus marched east into Mesopotamia with tens of thousands of legionaries. But the Parthians didn't fight like Rome. They fought with speed and distance, horse archers that could strike like a storm and vanish into the horizon. At a place called Carrhae, Crassus's army was surrounded. Roman shields and discipline, normally unstoppable, became a prison. The Parthians rained arrows until the desert itself seemed to hiss. Hour after hour, the Roman lines held. Until they couldn't, the desert became a grave. The sun watched silently as an empire bled. When the dust settled, Rome wasn't just defeated, it was humiliated. Crassus was killed, and thousands of Roman soldiers were captured alive. This is where the mystery begins, because in many wars, prisoners are ransomed, or executed, or sold into slavery. But in this case, some ancient accounts suggest the Parthians relocated Roman captives deep into their eastern territories, possibly as border guards in distant lands. And once those men were sent east, history goes quiet. No Roman rescue, no official record of their return, just a question that never stopped echoing. Where did the survivors go? Now imagine you're one of those captured Roman soldiers. You're far from home. Your legion is shattered. The banners are gone. The empire that raised you has vanished behind deserts you will never cross again. And you're forced to live, and perhaps even fight, under a foreign power. Over years, decades, you adapt or you die. Your Latin fades. Your armor rusts. Your identity becomes something smaller, a memory. And here's the spark that lit the Rome in China theory. Some researchers believe these prisoners were moved east into regions near Central Asia, and that over time, groups of them could have been drawn further along trade routes we now call the Silk Road. That part is plausible in a general sense. People moved across Eurasia all the time. The Silk Road was not a single road. It was a vast network of deserts, mountains, caravans, and frontier towns. A corridor where merchants traded silk and gold, where empires exchanged prisoners, where cultures collided. If you disappeared into that world, you could be swallowed completely. The specific claim, though, is where it turns into legend. The claim is that some Roman survivors may have ended up fighting in a conflict recorded by China, and that Chinese scribes described a strange foreign group using a formation that sounded, at least to some, very Roman. Fast forward to 36 BC. China's Han Dynasty is dealing with frontier warfare and rival powers beyond the Great Wall. The western frontier was dangerous. Nomads, rival kingdoms, warlords. And the Han Empire was pushing outward, trying to secure the edges of its world. There is a battle involving a fortress belonging to a leader known as Jiji, and in historical discussions of this event, a description appears that became famous. A group of soldiers fighting in a formation likened to fish scales. A layered defensive structure. Disciplined. Unfamiliar. In the 1950s, a scholar named Homer H. Dubbs argued that this fish scale formation could point to Romans, because Roman troops often fought in disciplined, overlapping shield formations that could look like scales. Dubbs's theory went further. He suggested that after this conflict, these foreign soldiers were settled in a frontier town, and that the town's name, Liqian, might connect to the Roman world. And once that idea was born, it spread like wildfire, because it's an irresistible story. Roman legionaries cut off from Rome, surviving as mercenaries, then absorbed into the Far East, a lost chapter of history hiding in plain sight, a Roman echo at the edge of China. But here's the key. This theory is not accepted as fact. It is debated, and many historians remain skeptical. Even so, the Liqian mystery refuses to die. Liqian is a village in Gansu province in northwestern China, near regions historically connected to Silk Road movement. Over the years, travelers and media stories claimed something strange. Some locals seem to have European-looking features, lighter hair, lighter eyes, taller stature. And that became fuel for the myth. Look at them, people said. They must be descendants of Romans. But physical appearance is a trap. Across Eurasia, human mixing has happened for thousands of years through migration, trade, conquest, and intermarriage. So appearance alone proves nothing. What about archaeology? If Romans truly settled there, we'd expect strong material evidence. Roman weapons, Roman inscriptions, Roman building patterns, Roman coins in clear context. But despite decades of fascination, there has not been a universally accepted archaeological smoking gun proving a Roman legion founded Liqian. And this is where modern DNA enters the story. There have been genetic studies and media reports about Liqian villages. Some coverage claimed DNA results showed Western ancestry. But even when Western Eurasian ancestry is present, that still does not mean Roman legion. It could reflect ancient Silk Road mixing, Central Asian ancestry, later migrations, or many other historical pathways. DNA can show mixture, but it cannot stamp Rome onto a village. So where does that leave us? Right in the uncomfortable zone that makes mysteries powerful. Not proven, not impossible, but unconfirmed and heavily debated. And perhaps that is why this story continues to haunt the imagination, because it sits at the boundary between history and legend, between what we can prove and what we can only wonder about. Here's the most responsible way to frame this story. Rome did lose thousands of men at Carrhae. Many were captured, and some may have been relocated east. People absolutely traveled across Eurasia in the ancient world. Chinese records describe unfamiliar formations and foreign fighters. But matching a phrase to Roman legion is interpretation, not proof. And the Liqian equals Roman colony claim remains unproven. But even if the Roman town in China idea is wrong, there may still be a haunting truth underneath it, that survivors of Carrhae could have been pushed east, swallowed by empires, their identities stripped away, until Rome became only a memory, a language forgotten, a banner lost, a story surviving only as rumor. Not just the idea of Romans in China, but the idea of men erased by history, and the world moving on as if they never existed. So here is the real question. If you were one of those captured Romans, and you realized you would never see Rome again, would you fight? Would you surrender your name? Would you build a life in the Far East, raise children, and become something new? And if that happened, would anyone, 2,000 years later, even recognize what you were? Or would your story dissolve, like ink in water, until it became only a myth called Liqian, because that is what the ancient world was full of: forgotten heroes, lost armies, civilizations buried beneath time, and mysteries that refused to disappear. If you want more ancient mysteries, forgotten history, and the legends of the ancient world, subscribe to Ancient Vault, because the deeper you go into the past, the more you realize. History isn't what we know. History is what survived, and some stories are still waiting to be found.